My name is Kevin, and I thought I knew my wife Vanessa better than anyone on this planet. 30 years together, that's no joke. We'd been through everything. The birth of our 2 children, midlife crises, financial struggles when I lost my job as a construction manager, and even through her mother's breast cancer 5 years ago. So when our 30th anniversary arrived, I wanted to make it unforgettable. I booked a table at Chicago's most expensive restaurant, Le Bernardin, and invited our closest friends, Lindsay and John, Christina and Russell and Ellen and Brett. They'd all been witnesses to our love story for decades. Vanessa looked stunning that night. She wore the red dress I'd bought her last Valentine's Day, and she glowed like a star. We raised toasts, laughed, reminisced about old times. I felt happy, maybe even the happiest I'd been in years. Around 9 o'clock, I excused myself to settle the bill with the waiter. The check was substantial, almost $500, but it was worth every cent. While I stood at the bar waiting for the receipt, I noticed our table was positioned awkwardly. Conversations could be overheard from the bar if you listened carefully. And then I heard Vanessa's voice, clear as a bell. "Girls, you have no idea how hard it's been for me to pretend all these years. Kevin is so limited. He only thinks about his work, his football on TV, his fishing trips with friends. But I've been living a completely different life for almost 8 years now." My heart lurched. Years? What was she talking about? "You mean that man from your yoga class?" Lindsay asked in a hushed voice. "Alexis, yes. He's different. With him I feel alive. We meet every week, sometimes more often. When Kevin thinks I'm at training or shopping with Mom." The receipt fell from my hands. The restaurant manager looked at me with concern, but I couldn't move. "What about the kids? About Calvin and Madison?" That was Christina's voice. "They're grown up, they have their own lives. Calvin's in college, Madison just moved to California. They'll understand. Or maybe they won't find out right away. I don't know, girls, I just can't go on like this anymore." "Does Kevin suspect anything?" Ellen asked. Vanessa laughed, a cold laugh I'd never heard from her before. "Kevin? He doesn't even notice when I change my hairstyle. He lives in his own world where everything stays the same. He thinks we're a happy couple that just grew old together. He can't see that I'm no longer the girl he married." The words hit me like lightning bolts. Each sentence was like a knife in the back. I stood there, trembling, trying to process what I'd just heard. "So what are you going to do?" Lindsay asked. "I don't know. Maybe after this anniversary, I'll finally find the courage to tell him the truth. Or just leave. Alexis says we could." I couldn't listen anymore. Blood pounded in my temples, my hands shook. 30 years. 8 years of betrayal. And she was talking about me like I was some stranger, some burden in her life. But then something unexpected happened. As I stood there, devastated and broken, I overheard another conversation from a nearby table. A woman was crying softly, talking to what appeared to be her sister. "I can't believe he's been lying to me about the cancer," the woman sobbed. "The doctor called today by mistake. He thought I knew. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and he's been telling me it's just stress from work." My world tilted. Here I was, drowning in my wife's betrayal, and this stranger was dealing with something far worse. A husband hiding terminal illness to protect her from pain. I walked back to our table in a daze, my anger now mixed with confusion and a strange sense of perspective. Everyone looked at me with smiles, everyone except Vanessa, who suddenly seemed a bit nervous. "Everything okay, honey?" she asked in that sweet voice she'd used with me all these years. Now I realized, it was the voice of an actress. I sat down and tried to smile. Yes, just the bill was bigger than expected. Our friends continued their conversation, but I wasn't listening anymore. I watched Vanessa, this woman I'd spent half my life with, and saw a complete stranger. How could I have been so wrong? How could I not have noticed that the woman I loved had been living a double life for years? The rest of the evening passed in a fog. I nodded, laughed at the right moments, thanked our friends for the wonderful evening. But inside, everything was burning. Anger, pain, despair, all mixed into one giant knot. When we finally got home, Vanessa began undressing, talking about what a wonderful evening it had been. "Kevin, thank you for tonight. It was so thoughtful of you to arrange everything." I sat on the edge of the bed watching her. She was still a beautiful woman. At 52, she looked younger than her age. And suddenly I understood why. She was in love. Just not with me. "Vanessa," I said quietly. "Yes, honey?" "Who is Alexis?" She froze in place. The hairbrush hung in midair, and her face in the mirror turned white as chalk. What do you mean?" "Alexis from yoga. The one you've been meeting for 8 years. The one you might finally leave your boring husband for." She turned to face me and I saw panic in her eyes, then something like relief. You heard? I heard. We stared at each other in silence. 30 years of shared life hung between us like an invisible wall. Kevin, I can explain. What exactly? How you been lying to my face for 8 years. How you wake up next to me every day thinking about another man. Or how you told our friends what a pathetic person I am. Tears flowed down her cheeks, but I felt no pity. I only felt emptiness. I didn't want it to happen this way. It just happened. 8 years doesn't just happen, Vanessa. 8 years is a conscious choice. Every single day. She sat on the bed next to me, but I moved away. Do you want a divorce? She asked quietly. Do you? A long pause. I don't know. But I knew. I could see it in her eyes, heard it in her voice that night at the restaurant. She'd already made her decision. She just didn't have the courage to voice it. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. The next morning, while Vanessa was in the shower, her phone buzzed with a text message. I wasn't the type to snoop, but the phone was right there on the nightstand, and the message preview showed a name, Alex. Without thinking, I picked it up. The message read, "Can't wait to see you today. I have something important to tell you about my wife." My blood ran cold. His wife. I quickly scrolled through their message history. Months and months of intimate conversations, plans to meet, declarations of love. But what shocked me most were the recent messages. Alexis had been married the entire time. He had a wife named Patricia and 2 teenage daughters. But that wasn't the most shocking part. 3 weeks ago he'd written to Vanessa, "Patricia found out about us. She's threatening to tell your husband if I don't end things. I'm scared, Vanessa. She's not stable. She's been following me." Vanessa had replied, "Don't worry. Kevin would never leave me anyway. He's too weak and dependent. Even if he found out, he'd forgive me eventually." I sat there staring at the phone, my hands shaking. Not only had my wife been cheating on me for 8 years, but she'd also been involved with a married man whose wife knew about the affair and was apparently unstable. And then another text came in from Alex. "Patricia knows where you live. She took photos of your house yesterday. I think she's planning something. We need to talk today." I quickly put the phone back where I found it and pretended to be asleep when Vanessa came out of the shower. She dressed quickly, kissed my forehead goodbye, and said she was going to yoga. But I knew better now. And I knew I had to act fast. Instead of going to work, I called in sick and drove to the address I'd seen in one of Alex's messages. His workplace at an architectural firm downtown. I waited in the parking lot until I saw him leave for lunch, then followed him to a small cafe. I watched him through the window, a tall, distinguished-looking man in his early 50s with graying hair and expensive clothes. He looked nervous, constantly checking his phone, glancing around as if he was being watched. And then I saw why. A woman entered the cafe, blonde, petite, but with wild, unfocused eyes. She walked straight to his table and sat down without being invited. Even from outside, I could see the tension between them. This had to be Patricia, the wife. I couldn't hear their conversation, but their body language told the story. She was agitated, gesturing wildly. He kept looking around, embarrassed, trying to calm her down. At one point, she pulled out her phone and showed him something that made his face go pale. Then she stood up, said something that made him flinch, and walked out. But not before she looked directly through the window, right at me. For a moment, our eyes met, and I saw something that chilled me to the bone. Recognition. She knew who I was. I quickly got in my car and drove home, my mind racing. How did she know me? Had she been watching our house? Following Vanessa? Following me? When I got home, I found something that made my blood run cold. Our front door was slightly ajar. I was sure I'd locked it when I left that morning. I entered carefully, looking around for signs of intrusion. Everything seemed normal until I got to our bedroom. There, on Vanessa's pillow, was a single red rose and a note. "She's not the only one keeping secrets. Check your email. A friend." My hands trembled as I opened my laptop. There was an email from an anonymous account with no subject line. Inside was a single attachment, a video file. I clicked play and my world shattered completely. The video was taken inside what appeared to be a hotel room. Vanessa was there, but not with Alexis. She was with another man, someone I'd never seen before. The timestamp showed it was from 2 weeks ago, right around our anniversary preparations. A second video showed her with yet another man, this one from a month ago. Then a third and a fourth. The anonymous emailer had been following my wife for months, documenting multiple affairs. But the final video was the most shocking. It showed Vanessa meeting with a woman, Patricia, the unstable wife I'd seen at the cafe. They were in what looked like Patricia's car, and they were clearly in deep conversation, not the confrontation I would have expected between a wife and her husband's mistress. I watched in horror as Patricia handed Vanessa an envelope. Vanessa opened it, looked at the contents, and nodded. They shook hands like they were making a deal. The email contained one more message: they're planning something for tonight. Your life may be in danger. Meet me at Millennium Park at 6 p.m. if you want answers. Come alone. I sat there, staring at the screen, trying to process what I'd just seen. My wife wasn't just cheating on me with one man. She was involved with multiple men, and somehow she'd made an alliance with the unstable wife of one of her lovers. But what were they planning? And why would my life be in danger? The rest of the day passed in a blur of paranoia and confusion. Every sound in the house made me jump. I kept checking the locks, looking out the windows, expecting to see someone watching me. At 5:30 p.m., I drove to Millennium Park. My mysterious contact had asked me to meet by the bean sculpture. I arrived early and waited, scanning the crowd for anyone who might be looking for me. At exactly 6 p.m., a woman approached me. She was in her 40s, professionally dressed, with kind but tired eyes. "Kevin?" she asked. I nodded. "My name is Detective Sarah Martinez. I'm with the Chicago PD, but I'm here unofficially. We need to talk." "You're a police officer?" "Yes, but this isn't police business. Not yet, anyway. This is personal. Patricia Williams, the woman you saw at the cafe today, she's my sister." The world seemed to tilt again. "Your sister?" "She's been having a mental health crisis since she found out about her husband's affairs. But it's not just about Alexis and your wife. There's something much bigger going on, and I think you're in danger." Detective Martinez led me to a bench away from the crowd. "Patricia's been following your wife for months, just like you saw in the videos. But she discovered something that changed everything. Your wife isn't just having affairs, Kevin. She's running a blackmail operation." "Blackmail?" "Vanessa targets wealthy married men, has affairs with them, and then threatens to expose them unless they pay. She's been doing this for years, not just with Alexis. The other men in those videos? They're all successful businessmen with everything to lose." I felt like I was going to be sick. But why would Patricia help her? Because Vanessa offered her a deal. She would end the affair with Alexis and give Patricia evidence of all his other affairs. Apparently, he's been cheating for years with multiple women. If Patricia would help her with one final, big score. What kind of score? Detective Martinez pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. It was a bank statement, my bank statement. "Somehow she's gained access to your accounts. Kevin, you're worth a lot more than you think. That construction company you worked for? They had a substantial life insurance policy on you that transferred when you left. Plus your father's inheritance that you never touched, your retirement accounts, the house equity, we're talking about almost $2 million. I stared at the numbers on the screen. I'd never paid much attention to our finances. Vanessa handled all the bills, all the investments. I just worked and deposited my paychecks. But I still don't understand why my life would be in danger. Because, Kevin, a widow collects a lot more than a divorcee. And Patricia is unstable enough to help make you a widow." The words hit me like a physical blow. "You think they're planning to kill me?" "I think Patricia convinced herself that if she helps Vanessa become a wealthy widow, Vanessa will disappear and leave Alexis alone. In her twisted mind, it's a way to save her marriage." I sat there in stunned silence, trying to process the enormity of what I was learning. My wife of 30 years wasn't just cheating on me. She was a criminal who was planning to have me murdered for money. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Why help me?" "Because Patricia is still my sister, and I don't want her to become a murderer. And because no one deserves what they're planning for you." "What exactly are they planning?" Detective Martinez hesitated. "From what I've been able to piece together from Patricia's behavior and some things she said, they're planning to make it look like an accident. Tonight, Vanessa's going to suggest you go for a drive to talk about your marriage. There's a section of highway near the lake where accidents happen frequently." The blood drained from my face. "Tonight? Patricia's been watching your house. She knows Vanessa told you about the affair last night. She's expecting you to be emotional, vulnerable, willing to go anywhere Vanessa suggests to work things out." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. "Can we go for a drive tonight? I want to talk about us. There's something I need to tell you." I showed the message to Detective Martinez and her face went pale. "Kevin, you can't go home. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. But what about my kids? My life? Everything I own is in that house. Your life is worth more than your possessions. And your kids need a living father more than they need you to be a hero." I thought about Calvin and Madison, both starting their adult lives, both believing they had a happy, stable family. How could I disappear without explanation? How could I let them think their father was a coward who just ran away? But then I thought about that other conversation I'd overheard at the restaurant. The woman whose husband was hiding cancer to protect her from pain. Sometimes love means making impossible choices. What do you suggest I do? I have a plan, but it's risky, and it requires you to trust me completely. Over the next hour, Detective Martinez explained her plan. It was indeed risky, but it was the only way to expose Vanessa and Patricia's plot while keeping me alive and gathering enough evidence to prosecute them. That evening, I called Vanessa and agreed to go for the drive. But instead of going home first, I went to the police station, where Detective Martinez had arranged for me to be fitted with a wire and a GPS tracker. Remember, she told me, we need them to incriminate themselves. Let Vanessa talk. Ask questions, but don't be too obvious about it. At 8 p.m. I pulled into our driveway. Vanessa came out immediately as if she'd been watching for me. She looked beautiful and sad, the perfect picture of a remorseful wife. Thank you for agreeing to talk, she said as she got into the car. Where do you want to go? Let's drive out toward the lake. Somewhere quiet where we can really talk. As we drove, Vanessa began her performance. She talked about how sorry she was, how the affair with Alexis had been a mistake, how she wanted to work on our marriage. I know I've hurt you terribly, Kevin, but I want you to know that it's over with him. I ended it today. Really? Really? In fact, I have something that might help you understand why I did what I did. She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. There are some financial documents in here. Things I should have told you about years ago. I glanced at the envelope while trying to keep my eyes on the road. What kind of things? Well, for instance, did you know that your father's inheritance has grown to over $400,000? I've been investing it for you. This was news to me. My father had left me money, but I thought it was much less. And that life insurance policy from your old company? It's still active. If anything happened to you, I'd receive over $500,000. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. She was actually telling me about the money she expected to inherit when I died. Why are you telling me this now? Because I want you to understand that I don't need Alexis or anyone else. We have enough money to start over, maybe travel, do all the things we always talked about. We'd reached the highway that ran along the lake, the same stretch Detective Martinez had mentioned. The road was dark, winding, with steep drops toward the water. Pull over here, Vanessa said, pointing to a scenic overlook. Let's get out and walk. This was it. This was where they planned to do it. I pulled over and turned off the engine. The overlook was deserted, just as they would have expected. Vanessa got out of the car and walked toward the railing that separated the parking area from the cliff. It's beautiful here, she said. Peaceful. I joined her at the railing, every nerve in my body on high alert. Below us, the lake stretched out into darkness and the drop was at least 60 feet. Vanessa, I need to ask you something. Of course. Are you planning to kill me? She turned to look at me and for a moment her mask slipped completely. I saw not the woman I'd married but a cold, calculating stranger. What kind of question is that? The kind of question a man asks when he's discovered his wife has been blackmailing her lovers and planning his murder with the unstable wife of one of them. Her face went white. Kevin, I don't know what you're talking about. Patricia Williams. The videos of you with multiple men. The bank statements. The envelope she gave you in her car. Vanessa stepped back from the railing, her hand moving toward her purse. How could you possibly know about your plan to push me off this cliff? About making it look like a suicide because I couldn't handle learning about your affair? And then I heard it, the sound of footsteps on gravel behind us. Patricia Williams emerged from behind a cluster of trees, and she was holding something in her hand. He knows too much, Patricia said to Vanessa. We have to do it now. Patricia, wait, Vanessa said, but there was panic in her voice now. This isn't how we planned it. Plans change, Patricia said, raising what I could now see was a gun. He's supposed to be devastated about your affair. He's supposed to jump on his own. But if he knows about us, we'll have to make it look like a robbery gone wrong. I backed away from both women, my heart pounding. This wasn't going according to Detective Martinez's plan at all. Patricia, put the gun down, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm sorry, Kevin. I really am. But my marriage is worth more than your life. That's when everything went wrong. Patricia's hand was shaking, and as she moved closer to me, she tripped on a loose stone. The gun went off. But instead of hitting me, the bullet struck Vanessa in the shoulder. She screamed and fell to the ground. Patricia stood there in shock, staring at the gun like she couldn't believe what had just happened. Oh God, I didn't mean. Vanessa. That's when the police sirens became audible in the distance. Detective Martinez had been monitoring everything through the wire I was wearing, and when she heard the gunshot, she called for backup. Patricia looked up at the sound of the sirens, her face a mask of terror. You set us up. I set up two people who were planning to murder me, yes. She raised the gun again, but this time she was pointing it at herself. My children. My children will know what I tried to do. Patricia, don't, I said, moving toward her. Your children need you alive. They need you to get help. For a moment, we stood there in tableau. Patricia with the gun to her head, Vanessa bleeding on the ground, and me trying to talk a desperate woman out of suicide. Then the police cars arrived, their headlights flooding the overlook with harsh white light. Detective Martinez was the first one out, her weapon drawn. Patricia, put the gun down, she called out. It's over. Sarah? Patricia's voice was small and confused. How are you here? I've been trying to help you, Pat. But you wouldn't listen. I just wanted to save my marriage. By committing murder? That's not saving anything, that's destroying everything. Patricia looked at her sister, at me, at Vanessa bleeding on the ground, and finally at the gun in her hand. Slowly she lowered it. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. The rest of the night was a blur of ambulances, police statements, and paperwork. Vanessa was taken to the hospital. The bullet had shattered her collarbone, but she'd live. Patricia was arrested and charged with attempted murder, conspiracy, and a dozen other crimes. But the story doesn't end there. 3 days later, as I was trying to process everything that had happened, Detective Martinez called me with more news. Kevin, we've been investigating your wife's activities more thoroughly. The blackmail operation was bigger than we thought. She's been running it for almost 12 years, not 8. We've identified at least 15 victims. 15? And here's the really twisted part. Alexis wasn't her lover. He was one of her victims. She'd been blackmailing him for 3 years. He was trying to end it when Patricia found out about the affair. That wasn't actually an affair. I sat down heavily in my chair. So everything she told our friends at the restaurant was part of her cover story. She needed people to believe she was having a simple affair to hide the fact that she was running a criminal enterprise. But what about all those videos? The hotel rooms? All part of the blackmail setup. She would seduce these men, record the encounters, and then demand money to keep quiet. The men you saw in the videos, we've talked to all of them. They weren't lovers, they were victims. I thought about the overheard conversation at the restaurant, about Vanessa talking about feeling alive with Alexis. It had all been lies, layers upon layers of deception. There's something else, Kevin. When we searched your house, we found evidence that she'd been drugging you. Drugging me? Small amounts of sleeping medication in your coffee every morning for the past 2 years. Nothing dangerous, but enough to make you tired, less observant, less likely to notice her activities. That explains so much. The afternoon drowsiness I'd attributed to getting older, the way I'd sleep so deeply that I never noticed her leaving the house at odd hours. Why are you telling me all this? Because you deserve to know the truth. And because Vanessa's trying to make a deal with the prosecutor. She's claiming she was coerced by Patricia, that she was as much a victim as anyone else. Is that possible? Not based on the evidence we've found. Vanessa was the mastermind, Kevin. Patricia was just her final desperate gamble to get out of the blackmail business with one big score. The trial took 8 months. During that time, I learned things about my wife that I never could have imagined. The prosecution painted a picture of a woman who had been living a completely fabricated life for over a decade. She'd never actually taken yoga classes. She'd been using that time to meet with her blackmail victims or scout new targets. The charity work she'd claimed to be doing? The book club, the girls' nights out, the shopping trips with her mother, all cover stories for her criminal activities. Most shocking of all, I learned that she'd been planning my death for over 2 years. The sleeping medication wasn't just to hide her activities, it was to establish a pattern of me being drowsy and potentially accident-prone. She'd researched insurance policies, inheritance laws, and even staged a few minor accidents around the house to create a paper trail of me being clumsy or careless. Patricia, meanwhile, had suffered a complete mental breakdown. She'd been hospitalized twice and was now in a residential treatment facility. Detective Martinez visited her regularly and kept me updated on her progress. She genuinely thought she was saving her marriage, Detective Martinez told me after one visit. In her mind, if she helped Vanessa disappear, Alexis would come back to her and they could rebuild their relationship. What about Alexis? He's trying to rebuild his life too. Turns out Vanessa had been bleeding him dry for 3 years. He'd remortgaged his house, borrowed against his retirement, even taken loans from loan sharks to pay her blackmail demands. And his marriage? Over. Patricia's actions were the final straw, but the marriage had been dead for years. He's in therapy trying to understand how he got trapped in Vanessa's web. The day of Vanessa's sentencing, I sat in the courtroom and watched the woman I'd been married to for 30 years be led away in handcuffs. She'd been found guilty on multiple counts of blackmail, extortion, conspiracy to commit murder, and fraud. The judge sentenced her to 25 years in prison. As she was being led away, she looked at me one last time. There was no remorse in her eyes, no sorrow for what she'd put me through. Just anger that her plan had failed. After the trial, I had to rebuild my entire life from scratch. The house was sold to pay restitution to Vanessa's victims. I moved to a small apartment across town and started over. The hardest part was explaining everything to Calvin and Madison. They'd thought they were dealing with their parents' simple divorce, not their mother being a criminal mastermind who tried to have their father murdered. Calvin, now 22 and finishing college, took it better than Madison. I always thought Mom was too good to be true, he said during one of our long conversations. She never seemed to struggle with anything, never seemed to have bad days. Real people have bad days. Madison, 20, struggled more with the revelations. She'd been closer to her mother and felt betrayed in a way that Calvin didn't. How could I not have known? She asked me through tears. I lived in that house for 18 years. How could I not have seen what she really was? Because she was very good at lying, I told her. She fooled everyone, including me. It took 2 years, but eventually, both kids came to terms with what their mother had done. They still visit her in prison occasionally, but they've both told me they don't consider her the same person who raised them. As for me, I'm still processing everything that happened. Some days I feel angry about the 30 years of lies. Other days I feel grateful that I survived. Most days I just feel tired. But there's one thing I've learned from all of this. Sometimes the most dangerous person in your life is the one who knows you best. Vanessa was able to manipulate me for so long precisely because she understood my weaknesses, my desire to trust, my tendency to avoid conflict. I've started seeing a therapist, Dr. Rebecca Chin, who specializes in trauma recovery. She's helped me understand that what I experienced wasn't just infidelity, it was psychological abuse on a massive scale. Vanessa didn't just cheat on you, Dr. Chin explained during one of our sessions. She created an entirely fictional reality and forced you to live inside it. That level of deception is profoundly traumatic. 6 months ago, I did something I never thought I'd do. I started dating again. Her name is Marie, and she's a librarian I met at a bookstore. She knows everything about my past, about Vanessa, about the trial. The first time she stayed overnight at my apartment, I woke up in a panic, convinced that she was planning something sinister. It took Marie holding me and talking to me for 20 minutes before I remembered where I was and who she was. This is going to take time, she said gently. But I'm not going anywhere. Learning to trust again has been the hardest part of rebuilding my life. Every woman I meet, I find myself wondering what secrets she might be hiding, what lies she might be telling me. But Marie has been patient. She's introduced me to her friends, her family. She's shown me photo albums from her childhood, taken me to her hometown to meet her parents. She's made her life transparent in a way that Vanessa never did. Last week, Marie asked me if I ever regret not trying to work things out with Vanessa before everything was revealed. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd confronted her that night, given her a chance to come clean and start over? I thought about it for a long time before answering. The woman I thought I was married to, the woman I fell in love with 31 years ago, that woman never existed. She was a character Vanessa created to manipulate me. You can't save a relationship with someone who was never real. But wasn't any of it real? 30 years, 2 children. Wasn't some of it genuine? I used to think so. But now I realize that even the good times were contaminated by her deception. When she said she loved me, was that real or was it just part of maintaining her cover? When she comforted me after my father died, was she genuinely caring, or was she calculating how much money she'd inherit? That must be incredibly painful. It is. But it's also liberating. I spent 30 years trying to be worthy of a woman who didn't exist. Now I can focus on building something real. Yesterday, I received a letter from Vanessa. She's allowed to write to me from prison, though I don't have to read her letters. I almost threw it away, but curiosity got the better of me. The letter was 3 pages long, and it was the most honest communication I'd ever received from her. She didn't apologize for what she'd done, but she did explain why she'd done it. She wrote that she'd felt trapped by our marriage from very early on, that she'd felt like she was disappearing into the role of wife and mother. The blackmail scheme had started small, a single indiscretion with a wealthy man who'd paid her to keep quiet. For the first time in my adult life I felt powerful, she wrote. I had money that was mine, secrets that gave me control over other people. I became addicted to that feeling. She described how the scheme had grown, how each success had made her bolder, greedier. She'd convinced herself that she deserved the money, that the men she was blackmailing were cheaters who had it coming. By the time I realized I was in too deep, I had too much to lose. I couldn't stop without losing everything I'd built. The letter ended with something that chilled me. I want you to know that I never hated you, Kevin. You were just irrelevant. You were the cover story that let me be who I really was. If you'd been a different kind of man, more suspicious, more controlling, my life would have been much harder. I read the letter twice, then burned it. Marie found me sitting by the fireplace, watching the ashes disappear up the chimney. Bad news? She asked. Closure, I said. Finally. I suggest you take that vacation you always talked about. A long one. Somewhere far away. This letter I didn't burn. I gave it to Detective Martinez as evidence for the parole hearing. 3 months before the hearing, Marie and I made a decision that surprised everyone, including ourselves. We decided to get married. Are you sure this isn't just because of the stress? Dr. Chin asked during one of our sessions. Sometimes trauma can push people to make major life decisions prematurely. Maybe, I admitted. But I've spent the last 3 years learning who Marie really is. I've seen her handle crisis, deal with my nightmares, support me through the worst period of my life. If I can trust her with that, I can trust her with everything. Our wedding was small. Just Marie's family, Calvin and Madison, and Detective Martinez, who'd become a close friend. We held it in Marie's backyard on a sunny Saturday in May. As I watched Marie walk toward me in her simple white dress, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: uncomplicated happiness. No hidden agendas, no secret plans, no lies lurking beneath the surface. Just love. Real, honest, transparent love. Calvin gave a toast that made me cry. My dad spent 30 years married to a woman who was pretending to be someone else. Today he's marrying a woman who's exactly who she appears to be. That's not just love, that's courage. A month after the wedding, the parole hearing took place. Marie and I sat in the gallery, along with Alexis and several of Vanessa's other victims. Patricia's lawyer painted her as a victim of her manipulative half-sister, a mentally ill woman who'd been exploited and coerced into criminal activity. But then the prosecutor presented our evidence. The detailed planning documents. The evidence of their childhood connection. Alexis's journal documenting Patricia's active participation in the blackmail schemes. And finally, Vanessa's letter warning me about Patricia's continued danger. The parole board deliberated for less than an hour. Parole denied. Patricia Williams, or Patricia Donnelly as we now knew her real name, would serve her full sentence. 25 years, just like Vanessa. As we left the courthouse, Detective Martinez pulled me aside. It's over, Kevin. Really over this time. How can you be sure? Because now everyone knows the truth. Patricia can't play the victim card anymore. Vanessa can't manipulate the system from prison. And you? She smiled. You're not the same man who walked into that restaurant 3 years ago. She was right. The man who'd gone to dinner that night to celebrate his 30th anniversary was gone. That man had been naive, trusting, willing to believe that love was enough to sustain a marriage. The man standing in that courthouse was harder, wiser, more careful. But also, paradoxically, more open to real love than he'd ever been before. Marie and I drove home in comfortable silence. As we pulled into our driveway, we'd bought a house together 6 months earlier. She turned to me and asked, "What are you thinking about?" "I'm thinking about that woman at the restaurant," I said. "Vanessa?" "No, the other woman. The one who was crying because her husband was hiding his cancer diagnosis from her. I keep wondering if she ever found out the truth and what happened to them." "Why?" "Because I've been thinking about the different ways people lie to each other. Her husband was lying to protect her from pain. Vanessa was lying to exploit me for money. Both were lies, but they came from completely different places. And I think I finally understand the difference between love and manipulation. Love might hide the truth to protect someone else. Manipulation hides the truth to benefit itself." We sat in the car for a few more minutes, watching the sun set behind our house. Our house, with both our names on the deed, both our belongings mixed together, both our lives genuinely intertwined. "Do you think you'll ever fully get over what happened?" Marie asked. I don't think getting over it is the goal, I said. I think the goal is learning to live with the knowledge that evil can wear a familiar face, and still choosing to trust good people when you find them. How do you know I'm good people? I looked at her, really looked at her. 3 years of transparency, 3 years of being exactly who she claimed to be, 3 years of loving me despite the baggage I carried. Because you've never asked me to be anyone other than who I am. Vanessa spent 30 years trying to change me into what she needed me to be. You've spent 3 years accepting me exactly as I am. Today, 5 years after that anniversary dinner that changed my life forever, I'm sitting in my home office writing this story. Marie is in the garden, planting flowers for the spring. Through the window, I can see her working in the sunshine, humming to herself. Tomorrow we're driving to visit Calvin and his new girlfriend at his apartment in Milwaukee. Next weekend, Madison is flying in from California to spend some time with us. My children have rebuilt their relationship with me, understanding now that the distant, distracted father they remembered was actually a man being slowly poisoned and psychologically manipulated by their mother. We should have seen it, Madison told me during her last visit. You were always tired, always seemed confused about things that should have been simple. We thought you were just getting older, but you were being drugged. You were kids, I reminded her. It wasn't your job to protect me. But we could have paid more attention. We could have asked more questions. And Vanessa would have had answers for all of them. That's what made her so dangerous. She was always one step ahead of everyone. Sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night, my heart racing from dreams about overlooks and gunshots and women with cold eyes. But now Marie is there beside me, real and solid and honest. Bad dream? She'll ask and I'll tell her about it, and she'll listen without trying to fix it or minimize it or rush me through the healing process. The scars from those 30 years of deception will probably never completely fade. But I've learned something important. You can't live your life trying to protect yourself from every possible betrayal. All you can do is learn to recognize genuine love when you find it, and have the courage to choose it over fear. 6 months ago, I did something I never thought I'd do again. I went back to that restaurant where it all began. Not the Overlook where Patricia tried to kill me, but Lou Bernardine, where I first heard the truth about my marriage. I wanted to see if I could sit at a restaurant table, surrounded by other people's conversations, without feeling paranoid or suspicious. Marie came with me, of course. We ordered dinner and talked about ordinary things. Our plans for vacation, Marie's promotion at the library, Calvin's upcoming graduation from graduate school. At one point, I heard a couple at the next table arguing quietly. The woman was accusing the man of lying about his finances. The man was defensive, insisting he'd told her everything she needed to know. 3 years ago, overhearing that conversation would have sent me into a panic attack. I would have seen deception and manipulation everywhere. But that night, I just heard two people who loved each other trying to work through a problem. Maybe he was hiding something small and embarrassing. Maybe she was being over-suspicious. Maybe they'd figure it out, maybe they wouldn't. The point was, their relationship was their business. I didn't need to assume the worst about every couple I encountered just because my own marriage had been built on lies. You seem different tonight, Marie observed as we walked to the car. Different how? Lighter. Like you finally put down something heavy you've been carrying. She was right. For 5 years, I'd been carrying the weight of wondering how I could have been so blind, so trusting, so thoroughly deceived. But sitting in that restaurant, I realized something important. I wasn't deceived because I was stupid or naive. I was deceived because I was dealing with someone who was exceptionally skilled at deception. Vanessa had spent decades perfecting her ability to manipulate people. She'd studied psychology, human behavior, emotional triggers. She'd made deceiving people her profession. The fact that I'd trusted my wife of 30 years didn't make me a fool. It made me a normal human being who believed that the person sleeping beside him every night was who she claimed to be. And the fact that I'd learned to trust again, to love again, to believe in the possibility of honest relationships. That didn't make me naive either. It made me resilient. Last week, I received one final letter from Vanessa. It was brief. Kevin, I heard about your marriage to Marie. I want you to know that I'm genuinely happy for you. Not because I feel guilty about what I did to you, I don't. But because you deserve to experience what real love feels like. I never loved you the way you loved me. I was incapable of that kind of love. I hope Marie is not. I also want you to know that Patricia will never stop hating you. Even if she serves her full sentence, she'll be 70 years old when she gets out. She'll still blame you for ruining her life. But here's the thing, she can't hurt you anymore. Not because she's in prison, but because you're not the same man anymore. The Kevin I married would have spent the rest of his life looking over his shoulder. The Kevin you've become will just live his life. That's the real victory, you know. Not that we got caught and punished, but that you survived and thrived. Take care of yourself. Take care of Marie. Be happy. I read the letter twice, then filed it away with all the other legal documents from that chapter of my life. I didn't burn it, but I didn't dwell on it either. It was just information. The final piece of a puzzle I'd already solved. Tonight, as I finish writing this story, I can hear Marie in the kitchen making tea. In a few minutes, she'll bring me a cup and ask how the writing went. I'll tell her it was difficult but necessary. And then we'll go to bed in the house we chose together, surrounded by the life we've built together, secure in the knowledge that what we have is real. That's not to say our relationship is perfect. We argue sometimes. Marie leaves dishes in the sink and I leave books scattered around the house. She's a morning person, I'm a night owl. She likes romantic comedies, I prefer documentaries. But those differences are just differences. Not deceptions. Not manipulations. Not strategies in some elaborate long-term scheme. They're just the ordinary frictions of two real people building a real life together. And after 30 years of living with an elaborate fiction, ordinary reality feels like a miracle. Thank you for watching the video to the end. Maybe YouTube will no longer offer you my channel, so subscribe to it by clicking subscribe on the right under the video to receive new interesting stories. Also on the right of the video there is a playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to, and you can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.